All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of From QA Challenges to Innovation with PRIZ. I'm your host, Debra, and today we're diving deep into a topic that might sound a bit dry on the surface, but is actually fascinating when you dig into it: risk management in quality assurance. We're going beyond those boring checklists and looking at how leading organizations are transforming their approach to risk.
And I'm Alex, joining Debra today to explore this critical shift in thinking about quality and risk. Throughout my career in aerospace quality and automotive manufacturing, I've seen firsthand how traditional approaches can sometimes create dangerous blind spots, especially as systems become more complex.
That's exactly why I wanted to have this conversation, Alex. So many industries, aerospace, manufacturing, healthcare, they all rely heavily on checklists and compliance protocols. But is that enough in today's rapidly changing environment?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Let me lay it out this way. Checklists and standard operating procedures are absolutely foundational in QA. They provide consistency and help with regulatory compliance. But, and this is a big but, static, compliance-focused methods can actually lull teams into a false sense of security.
You mean the "we checked all the boxes, so everything must be fine" syndrome?
Exactly. Even when every box is checked, unforeseen failures can still occur because real-world risks don't always fit neatly into predetermined categories. Take aviation, for instance. Researchers have noted that the use of checklists will not eliminate all aircraft accidents because risk cannot be completely eliminated. A crew might follow every procedure to the letter and still meet disaster if the process itself has gaps.
That's pretty sobering. It reminds me of that concept. What do they call it? The normalization of deviance?
You nailed it. That's when organizations grow so accustomed to small deviations that they start accepting them as normal. The Columbia Space Shuttle disaster in 2003 is a tragic example of this. NASA had detailed safety checklists, but leaders had grown to regard foam shedding as an acceptable risk after seeing it happen on previous flights without catastrophe.
And then one day, it wasn't just a minor issue anymore.
Right. The Columbia Accident Investigation Board concluded that NASA's culture had as much to do with the accident as the technical failure. The organization did not provide effective checks and balances, and hadn't demonstrated the characteristics of a learning organization.
So what are the main shortcomings of these traditional approaches? I mean, beyond just being static.
I'd highlight three big ones. First, there's the false assurance problem. Meeting minimum standards doesn't always mean a situation is truly safe. OSHA points out that companies have suffered serious incidents, even with zero safety violations, because regulations only cover the minimum requirements.
Sort of like getting all A's on your report card, but not actually learning the material.
That's a perfect analogy. Second, there's the reactive posture. Traditional QA risk management often reacts to known issues rather than anticipating new threats. If a risk hasn't been encountered before, it may not be on the checklist.
And the third?
Complacency and human factors. Static routines breed complacency. In aviation, there have been cases where pilots occasionally misused or skipped checklist items when they became frustrated or overconfident. Humans can become checkbox-focused and miss the bigger picture.
So what's the alternative? How are leading organizations moving beyond this checklist mentality?
They're adopting what we might call dynamic risk strategies. This means treating risk as a continuously evolving aspect of operations, monitored in real time, baked into design and testing, and simulated through what-if scenarios.
Can you give me an example of what that looks like in practice?
Sure. One hallmark is using data and technology for continuous risk assessment. Instead of annual reviews or after-the-fact audits, companies are leveraging sensors, AI, and big data to get live feedback on risk indicators.
Like predictive maintenance systems?
Exactly like that. Manufacturing plants have implemented systems that analyze equipment sensor data to anticipate failures before they happen. In aerospace, jet engines are outfitted with health monitoring systems that transmit performance data each flight. If a parameter trends out of bounds, maintenance teams get an alert to intervene before a failure occurs.
That sounds like it would save a ton of money and prevent accidents.
It does. I know of one company that used machine learning to analyze machinery data and predict when a critical part would wear out. This allowed them to replace the part during scheduled maintenance, avoiding potential in-service failure and costly unplanned downtime.
So instead of waiting for a monthly report, you're seeing risks form in real time. What other strategies are companies using?
Another big one is embedded scenario planning and simulation, actively imagining and preparing for what-if situations. Rather than assuming everything will go as expected, leading organizations practice adaptive foresight.
Like running emergency drills?
Similar, but more comprehensive, it's about planning for multiple plausible futures, including extreme, unexpected events. In aerospace, this might mean simulating how a spacecraft performs if multiple systems fail in combination. Threat and error. Management in aviation training is a good example. Pilots are trained with simulators that throw unexpected combinations of failures at them, so they practice prioritizing and problem-solving beyond standard checklist responses.
I love that. It's not just about following procedures, but developing a mindset for dynamic problem solving.
Precisely. And that connects to another key strategy: integrating risk thinking in early design phases, sometimes called design for safety. This means shifting left, addressing hazards up front when changes are easier and cheaper.
As opposed to finding issues after you've already built the thing.
Right, and the cost difference is enormous. Aerospace projects perform preliminary hazard analysis during conceptual design to identify potential hazards. Tools like failure mode and effects analysis and fault tree analysis help teams evaluate risks in complex systems early on. The result is designs with more built-in safeguards and fewer unknown unknowns.
This all sounds great. But are there examples of companies that have really succeeded with these approaches?
Absolutely. SpaceX is a fascinating case study. Their Falcon 9 rocket uses 9 engines on its first stage specifically to allow for engine-out capability. If one engine fails, the others compensate so the mission can still continue.
And that's not just theoretical, right? Didn't that actually happen?
It did. In 2012, a Falcon 9 lost an engine mid-flight, yet did exactly what it was designed to do. The rocket adjusted and delivered the payload successfully. SpaceX noted that Falcon 9 can even tolerate a second engine failure after liftoff and still complete its mission. No other launch vehicle of its era had that level of fault tolerance.
That's incredible engineering foresight. So they're designing systems that expect things to go wrong and can handle it when they do.
Exactly. It's what we call resilience by design. Modern passenger aircraft have similar principles. They're designed to safely fly on one engine if another fails, and critical systems have redundancies to prevent single-point failures from causing disaster.
Let's pivot a bit. I'm intrigued by this idea that risk can actually drive innovation. Can you talk about that?
This is one of my favorite aspects of modern risk management. Viewing risk not only as something to minimize, but also as a potential wellspring of innovation and improvement. Many of the greatest advancements have come from tackling daunting risks head-on and learning from failures.
Give me an example. I'd love to hear a concrete case.
NASA's sky crane maneuver for landing the Curiosity rover on Mars is a perfect example. This was a high-risk approach conceived because traditional airbags couldn't handle the rover's weight. The sky crane, essentially a rocket-powered hover platform lowering the rover on tethers, was born of necessity and considered a crazy idea by some. But it succeeded brilliantly in 2012, enabling larger rovers and more precise landings in the future.
So they turned a constraint into an opportunity for breakthrough thinking.
Exactly. SpaceX provides another great case study. While traditional aerospace culture was extremely risk-averse, SpaceX took a different approach. Elon Musk famously said, "Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough."
That sounds almost counterintuitive for an industry where failure can mean catastrophe.
It does, but there's an important distinction. This wasn't a cavalier attitude towards safety with people's lives, but rather a recognition that to achieve radical advances like reusable rockets, you must push boundaries and learn from mistakes. Their first 3 rocket launches failed, but each failure was analyzed intensively, leading to design fixes. By the 4th launch, they succeeded, and they had developed a culture of rapid iteration that outpaced competitors.
And now those booster landings, something that seemed impossible a decade ago, happen routinely.
Precisely, the risk they took by attempting rocket booster recovery and crashing several in the process paid off as a breakthrough innovation in aerospace. As Musk put it, if you're not failing, you're not innovating.
I'm seeing a pattern here. It's not just about the technology or the checklists, it's about the mindset and culture around risk.
You've hit on something crucial. Culture is the true backbone of effective risk management in QA. The most advanced checklist or analytics system won't help if the organization's culture discourages people from reporting issues or adapting to change.
So, what does a positive risk culture look like?
I'd call it a culture of preparedness, one that goes beyond mere compliance, embedding risk awareness into everyone's responsibilities and encouraging constant vigilance, open communication, and continuous improvement.
So, it's not just the QA team's job to think about risk, it's everyone's job.
Absolutely. One company described their goal as shifting the notion that safety is a static set of guidelines. Instead, they work to make safety a mindset, creating an environment where employees feel empowered to report concerns and share experiences, and leadership visibly prioritizes safety as much as production.
What about blame? I feel like in many organizations, when something goes wrong, the first question is, who messed up?
That's a critical point. A culture of preparedness is also a learning culture. One of the strongest indicators is that employees feel safe to report mistakes, near misses, or strange occurrences without fear of punishment.
Like those aviation safety reporting systems where pilots can anonymously report issues?
Exactly like that. In aviation maintenance and operations, programs like ASAP, Aviation Safety Action Program, allow staff to confidentially report errors or hazards. The emphasis is on fixing systemic issues, not blaming individuals. This approach has been vital in commercial aviation achieving very low accident rates because it surfaces issues that would otherwise stay hidden.
I can see how that would create a virtuous cycle. People report more issues, the organization learns more, and safety improves continuously.
That's it exactly. When an issue is reported, the response is, "Thank you, now let's solve it," rather than "Who messed up?" This just culture ensures lessons are learned and shared openly. Over time, it builds trust. Everyone knows that finding a problem will lead to improvement, not finger-pointing.
What about adaptability? I imagine that's important too.
Critical. High-performing QA teams train to be flexible. They develop contingency plans and empower team members to make decisions in crisis. Flight crews are trained in crew resource management. Any crew member can speak up if they see something wrong, and roles can shift during an emergency to leverage who has the most relevant knowledge.
Deference to expertise over hierarchy.
You've done your homework. In a factory setting, this might mean that if a line worker spots a serious safety risk, they have not just the right, but the obligation to stop the line. And managers support that decision. Afterward, there's a debrief. What did we learn, and how can we adapt our standard process to avoid this in the future?
So the process is never done. It's always evolving.
Exactly, continuous improvement. Kaizen is essentially institutionalized adaptability. The process today should be slightly better and safer than yesterday because we learned something new. Organizations with this mindset never consider the QA checklist final. They continually refine their standards.
What role does leadership play in all this?
Leaders set the tone by what they prioritize. If they only talk about cost and schedule, employees get the message that quality is secondary. But if leaders consistently ask in meetings, what are our top risks right now? Do we have any safety concerns? It normalizes risk discussion. They need to walk the talk, following the safety protocols themselves and visibly supporting quality initiatives.
This is fascinating stuff, Alex. If you were to sum up these ideas for our listeners, what would be the key takeaway?
I'd say this: risk in quality assurance is often seen as something to be minimized or avoided, a box to check on a compliance list. But a richer approach is emerging, one that treats risk management as a dynamic, creative, and integrative part of innovation.
So compliance becomes the floor, not the ceiling.
Exactly. By rethinking traditional approaches, implementing dynamic strategies, viewing risk as an opportunity, and building a culture of preparedness, organizations can not only prevent failures, but also drive innovation. In high-stakes industries, this evolution of risk management can mean the difference between disaster and discovery.
And ultimately, it's about redefining success in QA, not just as the absence of problems, but as the presence of a strong ability to adapt, learn, and innovate in the face of uncertainty.
You've captured it perfectly, Debra.
Well, listeners, I hope this conversation has given you some food for thought about how you approach risk in your own organization. Maybe it's time to look beyond those checklists and think about building a more dynamic, innovative approach to quality. Thank you, Alex, for sharing your insights with us today.
It's been my pleasure, Debra. These ideas have transformed how I approach quality management, and I hope they inspire our listeners too. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in to From QA Challenges to Innovation with PRIZ. Until next time, keep managing your risk in a new, innovative way